Hello, welcome to the Lone Show. I'm your host, John Malone. In this episode, no regulars, because reasons, as always. As for our guest, she's currently living in Texas. She's a writer and a yoga therapist. Interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Deborah Charnes.
Hello there. It is nice to be joining you from far away.
Yes, absolutely. So, how's life?
I love life. I'm 66 years old and I try to be grateful for every day in my life and for everything that I do. I have a gratitude practice, and that is actually one of the last chapter in my book is about gratitude. And I have a new, an only but new grandbaby, and that has changed my life a lot too. And I feel so blessed that I live near where my grandbaby is, so I can see him all the time.
That's nice. Is there anything you're currently working on or up to recently?
Well, I um I teach 4 yoga classes a week, and then I also have private yoga therapy clients that I see, and I also do Reiki and reflexology private sessions and special events. And then, of course, I'm always trying to promote my book, and I have thought about writing another book, but I'm not ready to write the other book yet. But my current book, it was just awarded 2 gold medals just the other day. So I'm really happy and pleased that it got that recognition.
Wow, fabulous. What was life for you growing up?
I grew up in a large city. I grew up actually in Chicago. And quite frankly, there was a lot of crime, and I had a lot of fear, I think, because of all the crime that was surrounding, where we lived. And I was very much, the bookish kind of kid. I remember I won when I was very young. I won some kind of a contest for reading the most books over the summer when school was not in session. And another time when I was a kid, maybe, I don't know, 8 years old, I won some kind of a writing contest. It must have been, I don't know if it was 1 paragraph. I mean, it was obviously nothing, but I won the contest. And I won a Barbie doll house and a couple of Barbie dolls. And oh my God, I was like, wow, that was pretty cool. So I was always into reading and I guess dreaming. And I think that reading is very much a way that you can dream.
Yes, indeed. If you were hosting a dinner party and you can invite 5 guests who are either dead or alive, who would you invite?
I love that question. Oh my God, if you were to ask me tomorrow, I could have a list of 100 people. No, the first person that came to my mind is Nelson Mandela. And one of the reasons why I mention him is because I did meet Winnie Mandela and their daughter back when I was a marketing manager of a shopping center long time ago. And I was, oh my God, I was just like in heaven to be able to meet Winnie and their daughter. And I have read a number of Nelson's autobiographies. And so he is definitely one person I would like to meet. And then what I think would make for a great dinner party along with Nelson is Mahatma Gandhi. And of course, I've read I've read, his autobiography, and I have been to the Gandhi Memorial in Delhi, India. And I find him inspirational for so many reasons. And then the third person who, again, I think would work so well with those two is Martin Luther King Jr. And Martin Luther King Jr. in the United States was the first person who really made a difference, I think, in race relations, but he also took Mahatma Gandhi's principles of do no harm and he spread them. And do no harm, which, as I said, is Mahatma Gandhi's principles, that is the first tenet in yoga. And so you said 5 people. I would have to have my mom. My mother was definitely someone who cared about social justice. And I think, again, to round it out, since there's those 3 men and then me, my mom, and I would love to have my aunt also, who I think would, make a great complement to that group.
Nice. Very good.
I wish I could do this.
Yeah.
And every one of them is past, so none of them is alive except me. Maybe you just gave me an idea for my next book. Maybe it should be Guess Who Came to Dinner, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, whatever the name of that movie is, but it's about a dinner table with those 3 luminaries, me, my mom, and my aunt. Oh my God.
Huh. I could say that. Where do you see yourself 20 years from now?
I certainly hope I'll be alive. But, I say that all the time. I am so grateful to be alive. There are many people who pass on when they're very young. A dear friend of mine's daughter was killed, by a drunk driver when she was in her early 30s. I know so many people who have had loved ones pass when they were very young. And so I just want to be healthy and happy and writing and traveling because I love traveling. So you said in 20 years?
20 years, absolutely.
Yeah. So that'd be cool because then I would be able to see my grandbaby as a young adult. If he wants to see me by then, but
Fair enough. Would you rather speak all languages or talk to animals?
I'd want to do both. No, I consider myself, I'm not a linguist, but I did study linguistics in college. And aside from English, I speak fluent Spanish and I can communicate in Italian and I can read Portuguese and French. And I also studied Serbo-Croatian. So I studied many languages, throughout my life. And I wish I could speak all of them fluently and perfectly. I'm going to stick with all the languages because I feel that to speak to animals, it's more just the vibes, and I think, I used to live in a rural area. I don't now. I'm in a city, but when I lived in the rural area, when I would take my daily walks, if I saw some animals that I was afraid of, I would just try to pass on positive vibes to them.
Yeah, fair enough. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Say maybe in a 747 airplane so I could go everywhere. Or I'm not much of a boat person, but I did have a dear friend when I was in college that dreamt of living in a boat so that, he could travel wherever he wanted to via the boat. If you had asked me this a couple of years ago, my answer would have changed throughout my life. So ages ago, I would have said Mexico. I have been going to Mexico since I was a little kid. I have family in Mexico. I consider it my second homeland. And Mexico is very near and dear to me. I've lived and worked in many other countries, in Latin America, and then also even in India and Italy. But because you're asking me today, I would have to say the United States. And the main reason is because my daughter and my grandson are here.
If your mind was an island, what would it look like?
I well, I think the main answer to that is that I think like a lot of people, my mind is always jumping. I'm a very good multitasker. And so I would think an island where there are active volcanoes, because to me, the active volcanoes represent the energy that I have, and they also represent the the morphing of something and the constant changing and adaptation. And that is actually something that I think about every night, is that I also give thanks that I think I am very flexible in adapting to many different things. And when you introduced me, you said that I was a yoga therapist and an author, which are totally correct. But throughout life, I have had many different careers. And now they kind of gel because I have always been a writer and have always been interested in holistic health and in nutrition. And that is basically what I do as a yoga therapist. I'm basically a holistic coach. And my book, From the Boxing Ring to the Ashram, I consider a yoga therapy book in disguise. Most people don't know what yoga therapy is. And my book shares things such as laughter as medicine, or sound therapy, or as I mentioned before, gratitude practices. Another practice that I think is very important for many of us, especially if you have too much of that lava that's, flowing out you all the time and bubbling up and gurgling up, is to disconnect from your devices. And so once a week, I try to honor Shabbat or Sabbath by disconnecting from all my devices and by not driving anywhere, and to have more quiet, introspective time to cool down that lava.
Absolutely. If your life was a meal, what kind of meal would it be?
That's an interesting question because, as I mentioned, I love languages and I love traveling. And I mentioned that I have worked in many different countries, and I have lived in 3 different countries. And so I would say that that meal would be fusion. It would be fusion from different countries. And one thing that I'm thinking would be beautiful, and I think I might have seen somebody post on social media last week about a restaurant in Los Angeles, maybe I'm wrong, that was fusion of Indian food and maybe Mexican food. Now, I would not fuse Mexican with Indian, but I would fuse Indian with other regional cuisine from Latin America, because there are a lot of commonalities, such as the rice or the plantains, or of course the spices. And so I think that the fusion would be beautiful between different places in Latin America. And
Yeah, that
maybe
sounds like a great idea.
maybe that's another book. I'm not a cook, but I could find some chefs to create some interesting fusion recipes. And then
Yeah,
I'm vegan, and of course Indian food is traditionally vegetarian, and so that makes it easier for me.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What was the largest thing you have ever seen?
I'm trying to, I guess it would have to be skyscrapers, that would be the tallest. And in terms of the largest, I lived in the Andes Mountains, and so I would have to say the Andes Mountains because it's a range, and so it's not just one mountain, although each mountain is huge, but it's a chain, the continuing, they're unending, kind of like just as an ocean is unending, but you can't really see very far where that ocean ends. But the mountains, I think you can see more how they just are so expansive.
Absolutely. Where was the furthest you traveled to from where you're originally from?
By car or by plane? I'll answer actually both questions. So the first one would be by car. And by car, by road, because it wasn't completely by car, but I traveled from near Chicago, which is the northern part of the United States, to Mexico City, which is pretty far down. And I went by car to the border. And then that was probably about a 27-hour drive nonstop to the border with Mexico. And then from the border, I took a bus from the border to Mexico City, which I don't know if that was maybe 15 hours. I can't recall. So that would have been the longest road trip I did. And then the furthest that I have been in plane, I'd have to look at a map, but I'm guessing that the furthest I have been is...
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And the way that I travel, I always travel on the cheap. And so because I travel on the cheap, it has taken me sometimes 3 days to get to India because, I'm flying on the cheap tickets or using my miles. And so there are very long layovers.
Yeah, of course. Have you met anyone famous?
Many people, of course, yes. So, so that's a beautiful question. From when I was a child, I shouldn't say a child, I was probably 16 years old, and I was at the airport in Chicago alone. I'm guessing that this was when I was first traveling alone to Mexico, in plane, not by road. And there were a lot of people surrounding Muhammad Ali, the great boxer who happened to be from Chicago. And coincidentally, the name of my book is From the Boxing Ring to the Ashram because one of my gurus is a former boxer. But at that point, I didn't really care that much that Muhammad Ali was there. He was just a person. And I wasn't surrounding him, with all these groupies. And so he left the circle where he was with all these people surrounding him. He came up to me and he gave me his autograph. I didn't even ask for it. And I thought that was really unusual and really impressive. So, and I never was the kind of person that collected autographs. To me, again, everybody is a person. Everybody is, the people that I bow down to, as I said before, are people like Gandhi, or Mandela or Martin Luther King Jr. And I have to say that Muhammad Ali, he did some wonderful things for social justice as well. He was incredible, but I wasn't starry-eyed. I worked from the time I was pretty young in the media. I worked for radio stations, I worked for newspapers, I worked for television. And throughout that time, I was constantly meeting big name celebrities. And then when I left the news media world and I started working in public relations, and I became one of the few bilingual media trainers, and I worked in the United States and in Latin America, and I trained CEOs and celebrities and all sorts of people. And media training is you train them as to how to respond to the media. So basically, hopefully, this interview with you is not proving that I didn't know what to do. But as I always say, it's one thing to tell someone what to do, and it's another thing to do it yourself. So anyway, throughout my life, I have met so many celebrities. And then my book, From the Boxing Ring to the Ashram, is based on 12 of my gurus around the world. And to me, my gurus are celebrities because, again, I look for what have they done to make this world a better place. And again, nothing wrong. Muhammad Ali did a lot to make this world a better place. But the kinds, in terms of all the other celebrities, I have a much greater respect for them when I know that they're also doing things to make the world a better place. And many of them do use their fame and their artistic talents to make a difference.
Yes, of course. What is the best way to start the morning?
Well, I'll tell you what is not the best way. And this is something that I talk about in my book. I do not believe in drinking coffee or black tea. I consider caffeine to be a drug, and I have to admit that I loved that drug of coffee for most of my professional life. And I felt that I needed to constantly give myself a couple sips of coffee to keep me alert and to keep my brain sharp. But caffeine is a drug. And again, whether it's black tea, whether it's green tea, whether it's white tea, those all have caffeine. And of course, I don't drink any caffeinated beverages like Coca-Cola either. So what I would say, and just because I know that most people do start their day with coffee or tea, is try starting it with a more natural way to get your own body's drugs working. And so that would be things such as breath work or meditation or physical yoga, movement therapy, or maybe singing in the morning when you wake up. There are many different, and those are all different samples of what I talk about in my book about things that you can do for free to be healthier and happier.
That's good. I definitely agree with the whole not drinking coffee in the morning because, yeah, like, if you drink coffee, you're just going to crash out in the middle of the day. It's not worth it.
Right. And then also on the other end is I don't drink any alcohol, and traditionally yogis don't drink alcohol. And again, alcohol is a drug as well, but alcohol has the reverse effect as caffeine. So caffeine is a pick-me-up, but alcohol is a depressant.
Yes, of course. As you work in your works as a yoga therapist, what methods do you instruct to your, I don't know how you say it, but when you have your yoga classes, what methods do you teach people?
Well, thank you for that question. And first, I want to clarify the difference between yoga and yoga therapy. When I teach yoga, and I teach 4 classes of yoga a week, and all of my classes are different themed based on where I teach. So they tell me they want me to teach gentle yoga, or they want me to teach slow flow, or they want me to teach power yoga or Pilates yoga combo. So I come to the class prepared to do yoga that is more geared towards one of those types of the physical yoga practices. That said, depending on who shows up, I always change it. And if, let's just say, if I have a pregnant woman in the class, I don't want that pregnant woman to be the only person who can't participate in most of what we're doing. So I will modify a lot of times what we're doing. Or if I have people with back pain, I frequently will ask people, how are you feeling today? What do you feel your bodies want to work on? Or, what is it that you're looking for? And people will say, they'll tell me all different things. Oh, stiff neck, stiff hips. I want to strengthen my core. So I will incorporate all that into whatever I'm doing, be it power or slow flow or gentle. So that is my approach as a yoga teacher. Now, that said, many yoga teachers don't do that, but I am an experienced yoga teacher with many hours of training and many hours of practice. A yoga therapist is very different. I meet one-on-one with my clients. So yoga teacher, I call the people that I work with students. And as a yoga therapist, the people that I work with are my clients. And I traditionally do a 2-hour intake with them. And I have many different forms that I ask them to fill out. I want to know all about their medical history. I want to know all about their physical history, including traumas. I want to know about their emotional state. It's a very 360-degree type of an intake. I look at their posture. I will test their muscles. I do all different things. And then I work with each person individually to create a protocol that I think is right for them. And this is something that I talk about in my book as well. I have my background as a yoga therapist is strongly influenced from traditional Chinese medicine and from Ayurveda, which is the life science of India. And in both traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, we don't look at, oh, he has a toothache or a backache, give him an aspirin. We look at what is causing the toothache or what is causing the backache and try to alleviate the root cause. An entire chapter in my book is about chronic pain because 1 in 5 people suffer from chronic pain, and back pain is the most common of chronic pains. And as an example, I was diagnosed with a musculoskeletal deviation when I was a kid because I had chronic back pain when I was just maybe 12 years old. And as a result, I learned that I have to strengthen my core to alleviate back pain. So until I die, I am going to have to work on strengthening my core. And that's one of the reasons why I'm a Pilates instructor, because Pilates is great for the core. So long response to your question, but big difference between yoga therapy and yoga classes. And in yoga therapy, no two people will get the same prescription.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is all we have for this episode. It's great having you on, Deborah, talking about your work as a yoga therapist, your writing work, and possibly a third thing, and so much more. It's been great.
Well, thank you. You have always such unexpected questions that really make me think, and I find them inspirational. Seriously, especially that book on the meal, and also who I would invite to dinner, 5 people living or deceased.
Yeah, of course. And until next time, stay tuned for more.